John Summit, Camel Fat, Gorgon City, Vintage Culture, they've all mastered the art of the rolling bass line, and you can too. The most common thing I've heard in dance music this year is the rolling bass line. If you do it the wrong way, it can be pretty boring, so let me show you a few ways you can take it up a notch. I do have a theory on why I think rolling bass lines work so well. Listen to this normal, standard bass line. It can be pretty hard to come up with a melody that's going to fit on top of that. The rhythms have to work really well together. On the other hand, a rolling bass line, it's more like a blank canvas because any rhythm can fit on top of it. Any new melody you can think of is going to have a rhythm that is made up of different combinations of 16th notes. So you could make any rhythm work well with it. You could have a slower, more atmospheric lead sound on top of it. Or you could throw a random vocal chop on it. That gives it a totally different vibe. Or we could just put a normal vocal on it.
Overthink tomorrow when we're alright. That's when we forget just who we are. Make us come together and it's alright. That's when you remember who you are.
What I ended up settling on was this lead melody. Anyway, the point is that the rolling bass line is such a versatile foundation to build on top of. Now let's talk about how you can actually make it sound professional. First of all, you want one layer that's the foundation that sits below everything else. I'm using this sound for that. It's a pretty basic sound, there's nothing crazy about it, but that's exactly what you want. With any rolling bass line, you're gonna have an envelope shape that looks like this, so it's really short and plucky. But more importantly, you need to make sure that it's in mono, so the notes don't bleed into each other. Let's check out the frequency spectrum. This synth's main job is to fill out the sub-frequencies. What's really important with sub-basses is that they're properly compressed. I can tell the sound is properly compressed because all the sub-notes are sitting in this volume range right here. If it wasn't properly compressed, the volume range would be a lot bigger, so that's always something to keep an eye on. And you can see there's plenty of higher frequencies happening in this bass too, but they're not too loud. And that's so I could leave room for more layers. Listen to before and after I add just 2 layers in. So above that foundation layer, we left room for a synth that adds more character. It's still really short and plucky, but I was able to use a sound that's more unique. And all the sounds in this video are from my Modern Synths pack and my House Drums pack, which you can check out at bigzsounds.com. But I'm making sure that this sound is only taking up the middle frequencies. So I'll call this range the character of the bass, and then underneath that you would have the foundation, which we already talked about. But then there's still room up top for a third layer, which I'll call the crunch. And that's coming from this sound right here. It's a really wide sound. I'm just using 2 voices of unison in each oscillator, so they're only on the left and right sides. And I'm using a ton of this bright white noise to get that high-end crunch in there. So if you think of the rolling bass line in terms of those 3 sections, then you can get really creative and come up with a cool sound for it. So that might be where most people stop, but I think this 16th note rhythm can get a little boring, and that's where accent layers come in. You can just pick a couple notes to accent throughout the bass line, and it really helps add some groove. Right now, that's just playing the same notes as the bass line, but if we want to give it more depth, we can turn those into chords. And I really want this rhythm to bounce, so I've added one more layer in to drive that rhythm home. All these layers are just adding groove, so let's do a before and after. Now you might think we've done everything we can to support this bass line, but we can still make this track better. Something I like to do is take a really atmospheric sound like this, but then I'll run that through a volume shaping plugin to give it the same rhythm as the bass. When we add that on top of our bass line, it gives it a really nice texture. So that's why I like to call these texture layers. They're sounds that aren't part of the bass, but they're playing the same rhythm as the bass. I also have this arpeggio playing the same rhythm. And I would even consider these shakers and hats as texture layers because they have the same rhythm too. All those layers are just helping the bass sound even more powerful. So I'll play the full drop with everything together now. Make sure to check out my sounds at bigzsounds.com, and thanks for watching. Peace.